雲をつかむような話になりますが、5月の新緑が美しい頃、1週間ぐらいずっと雨が降り続いて、ようやく上がった日があったのです。
It's a story that may sound extremely vague, like trying to grasp a cloud. But there is a day at the time of year when the May greenery is its most beautiful. And it had been raining constantly for about a week.
夕方5時ごろ、電車に乗ってドアの近くに立っていたら、自宅の近くの鶴見川の向こう側に日が傾いていて、雲の切れ間から筋のように光が注いでいました。
It was at about 5 in the evening, and I was on the train, standing near the door. The sun was getting lower in the sky over the river, not far from my home, when suddenly a gap opened in the clouds, and a single ray of sunlight poured through.
まるで宗教画にあるみたいな光線を見たときに、周りの音が聞こえなくなって、その光線が響きに思えたんです。
It looked like a ray of light in a religious painting, and at that moment, I was no longer hearing the sounds around me. Instead, that ray of light felt like it was resonating, sound, enveloping my entire being.
ドキドキざわざわしたすごく不思議な感覚でした。その時になんとなくこれが聞きたかった音なのかなと思いました。
It was a mysterious feeling that made my heart beat with excitement. And at that moment, I felt like this might be the sound I had been hoping to hear.
For me, it's mainly been through meditation. I do a lot of the Vipassana insight meditation. I've done that since the early 90s. And what's interesting is some of the most, powerful experiences are almost often at the beginning of a spiritual path. So, but what I noticed was one of my first, it's kind of funny actually, one of my first big experiences after sitting, and I just often they do like 45 minutes sit, 45-minute, or maybe 45-minute walk, and I just sat longer. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I'm not a super visual person, but I kind of saw or felt or grokked. There was like a big cruise ship, and I heard this voice that said, Nancy Beckman can go on vacation. And it was like, that's really silly. But and where I was at that time, it was really profound, because what I realized was, I'm not the captain of the cruise ship. I don't have to make it happen. It had a really profound effect on me afterwards, because this was probably, early 90s, so what's that, 30 years ago. I was kind of wondering what I wanted to do with my life type thing. And I realized that the less important Nancy Beckman, the less important the I was, the more important what I did was. And, I didn't think much more beyond it then, but I realized it was like, because instead of just being Nancy Beckman, I felt, complete with the whole, like a part of the whole. So my part in that whole was much more important than Nancy Beckman's single part would be. So that was one of the first experiences I had. And then on that same retreat, I had another one where I had another one's kind of an interesting one. I don't know if it's related to the self so much, but one was that I walked out into the cloister, and it was like, all of a sudden it was just like bliss. Everything, I was like, what's the word? Mesmerized or captivated just by looking at the ground. Every little detail was just kind of not so much shining with light, but just shining with energy. And I think that's probably also a state that they call piri, not the instrument, P-I-R-I, which is kind of it's like a beginning bliss state that you get when you've been concentrated. The typical thing is to just watch your breath in and out, or watch it with your stomach, nostril, or whatever. But some retreats, they would have you actually do the labeling technique, where everything you do, you label it, like lifting or intending to move. You get to the point where you can actually feel the intention to move before you just move. Especially with like walking, you can say with your foot, you can go, lifting, placing, lifting, placing. So everything you do when you're moving towards, let's say you're going to go to the door, you say reaching and turning. But I think what I was thinking of, when you focus your mind on something like that labeling or like the breath, then I think that's an avenue for the self to kind of go on vacation. And I think for me, I meditate almost every day. I think the reason I do it is it gives me a break from the self. My self does go on vacation.
6 years old. Lived in Silver Spring, Maryland, outside Washington, D.C. with my mother and father. Came home from school on the last day of first grade. And it was in a mood of, this sounds like a fictional setup, but it's not, in a mood of just unbelievable expansion and happiness and a sense of promise and potential, because at school that last day in the first grade, we had wrapped up things at school kind of, but they were more of a potential accomplishment than a full accomplishment. The two things that were most important is we got in our report cards, and for the first time all year I had straight A's, and they were also straight A's for the whole year, so there was this sense, because that was we didn't get grades in kindergarten the year before. Wow, oh cool. And then there was also, we had planted in the winter, we had planted vegetables, and in the spring on the last day of school we dug them all up and harvested them, or we dug mine up. Many of them were already above the ground, but I planted radishes, which were these secret bright red things that you didn't get to look at. Yeah. You just dug them up one day, and were they there? Yes, they are. So I had this bunch of my own radishes that I'd grown from seeds, and I had my report card, and I got everything together and walked home, because I walked to school in kindergarten and first grade. And I got home, and my mother was waiting on the doorstep of our apartment, sitting on two suitcases. She was all dressed in a jacket and a hat and everything, and there was a taxi cab sitting there idling. And I walked up, and my mother said, "There's been a change. Your father and I are getting something called a divorce, and he's gone. We've moved out of the apartment here, and you and I are moving to North Carolina and starting a new life." And this was like getting hit in the face with a shovel, you know. And I didn't believe her. I ran into the apartment, and it was in fact completely empty. My father was completely gone. Everything that she thought I needed was that I had owned when I left for school that morning was now reduced to whatever she fit into one of those bags. And this cab was waiting to take us to the airport. We flew from there to meet her high school boyfriend, whom she'd been carrying on an affair with for 8 years. And they immediately were together from that point on and got married and everything. But this was all in one moment. And so what happened to me was, in addition to adjusting to whatever I had to adjust to at this moment, and getting ready to get in this taxi cab and go and get in an airplane, I was thinking, what the fuck? What this did for the first time taught me a really excellent lesson, which I had known before this, but I had integrated it. And this was a time when it was not integrated anymore. And that is that I was alone. That ultimately, my mind was inside my head. My hands felt what I put them on. I was a single individual. I had agency and stuff. I knew that I could do stuff, but I was alone. And what I understood or didn't understand was the limit for myself. And I could understand more things than I knew at the moment, like this incredible bouleversé disruption of my life. But I made the decision, not so much a decision that I knew I could enforce consciously, but it was a deeper kind of level. I said, nothing is ever going to surprise me again. This surprised me. I didn't see this coming. And that's never going to happen to me again, because this feels like shit. At the same time, I don't think I made this up. I think I recognized the nature of life and the nature of these moments. At the same time, I wanted to feel connected. And it just became clear to me all of a sudden, and this endured for minutes and minutes and minutes, that I could relax because I was connected to everything. More that I was vaguely aware of everything. And I relaxed because there was a sense that it was a temporal sense to everything that was happening. I had time to consider all of it. It was like time was a little bit suspended. I had the leisure inside my mind to move around and examine all this stuff and figure it out for myself. And yet I could figure it out because there was nothing in the world that was outside my reach, because I could touch everything. My awareness could reach everything. And that sense of simultaneously being tied to the little grieving person, and the sense that I got time to figure it all out, was my first instance of having, that's myself, but this is myself too.
6 years old, silver spring near Washington, D.C. In the spring, silver spring, Washington, D.C.
it's funny because when you asked this question, the first story that came to mind that I actually had completely forgotten, because it's really bizarre. When I was a child, like 4, 5, 6, I could stare in the mirror and make myself disappear. And it wasn't something I was trying to do. It was like you. It was like something that happened. That I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and was sort of riveted by my image. And as I looked at my image, and I would completely disappear. And I could see the room. I mean, there was no hole like where my body was. It's like the room was where my body was. You know, so it was like a complete, it was like invisible. And along with it came that out-of-body sensation that I was bodiless and selfless. Like you're describing, there was that sense of timelessness, spacelessness, and egolessness. As a child, it freaked me out. But I kept doing it. And the funny thing is as a child, I never stopped to ask, is this weird? You know, it was just a thing that I did. It never even occurred to me to ask myself, does this happen to other people? It had something to do with a certain gaze. I could look at myself in the mirror and I could kind of, it's a little hard to describe, but I could manipulate, shift the sort of gaze. I could somehow shift out of a sort of mundane, everyday way of looking into kind of like a different way of looking. And then, like I said, the first thing that I would notice is that everything would, you know, the image would start to decompose, like pixelate and decompose. And then my own sensation then was, I think that there was this initial sensation of almost a sense of slipping, which is something that I've sensed in other, you know, self-dissolving experiences. Is, I mean, including like drug experiences, there's this feeling of sort of almost like going down a slide, where it's like, okay, I'm slipping into another dimension. That would be like the first feeling. There'd be like the pixelation and the image is breaking up, and now I feel this sense of myself sort of slipping into some other dimension, and it felt very tingly. There was like a tingly feeling and a sense of my boundaries disappearing. And I mean, my body was literally disappearing before my eyes. And I was no longer Anne. It was definitely like a samadhi. In yoga, we call it a samadhi experience. So samadhi is this experience of oneness, of timelessness, spacelessness, egolessness. You know, in the Indian tradition, they have a saying, you know, there's, I don't know how much you're familiar with it, there's the triumvirate, the main triumvirate of gods is Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahma is considered the creator, and they talk about all these yugas. Yugas are these eras, these huge eras that are like tens of thousands of years, are but a blink of an eye, of Brahma's eye. So things come into creation when he opens his eye. Things come into when he closes his eye, they go out of creation.
years ago. I'm a witch, and my life mate was a witch also. And we were coven mates. We went before the gods together. We celebrated the Sabbats together. We worked on developing our magical and psychic abilities together, and we were also in love with all that entails. And there was one night when we were together and very intimately close, and we often hear of and experience lovers merging, but this was different. Suddenly, for one large moment or a few brief moments in one thing, I was not myself anymore, and I was him. And I saw black and yet sparkling and glittering darkness, and I felt what it was like to be him and to be inside of me, to be enveloped and to be in his role. And it only lasted one instant, but it was startling, and it was incredible, and it was just over so quick, and I had to stop and let him know what had happened. And now he's gone, and it's one of the memories I have of him was for one brief moment being here. But when I was there, I had no sensation of what was to come, how deep his mental illness was, and that he would ultimately take his own life. There was nothing of that there. It was only a moment of being in love in a physical way and being somebody I was not. So that's my story. Well, it happened very quickly. It was my experience, and then all of a sudden it was not. It was just very sudden and a complete multi-sensory transference. The sensation of having a different body, of having a different part that I never had on my body before. As for sounds, I think it was different. I think there were sounds of breath.
The process feels like, you know those time-lapse videos of like a decaying log or flour, or like sugar melting into hot water or tea? That's kind of what it feels like. When I was first learning how to do this, my body thought it would jump me awake into a startled state, like when you're falling asleep in class and your body jolts you awake to pay attention. The fear would swell inside of me and I'd get this sense of like, oh, I'm dying, panic, and then it would subside. And I realized I'm actually surrendering. So I practice trusting the let go and assuring myself that nothing can really harm me and I'm safe. And then, like anything that you practice enough, I started to be able to do it with more ease. But I definitely didn't used to be able to do this. I actually used to feel the denseness of my form against whatever was supporting it, a mattress or yoga mat or someone's shoulder or chest.
Sugar melting, fear swelling, sense swallowed by tide, and then subside. You're surrendering, nothing can harm me. Dances all for beauty sensations, tune my body out, shedding layers like armor, nothing can harm me.
So I found myself at 23, I was having an endoscopy because I thought I had celiac disease, but it came back negative. Then at 27, I had a CT scan, but it showed no abdominal abscess. And then at 31, I had a mammogram, and it came back negative for breast cancer. But still, I was convinced that it was only a matter of time. So when I felt a persistent pain in my lower back while I was pregnant, you can imagine that my worry meter just about short-circuited from overload. And, you know, my midwife was reassuring, especially after she ran some urine samples and they came back clean, showing no sign of UTI and no sign of a bladder infection. But the pain persisted, and so did I. I wouldn't let it go. Because it's like I knew this time something was wrong. And eventually, an ultrasound was ordered to check my kidneys. And I found that they were both healthy, but one of my daughter's kidneys was missing. And it also found that there were 3 cysts on her brain and a hole in her heart. And ultimately, it found that her body was what they call incompatible with life. I used to fear that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant, that my body would fail me if I tried. But I no longer have that fear. I no longer see my body as my enemy. I see it as more of an arbitrary boundary, like state lines. I see it as a vessel for something much, much faster than it could possibly contain. So I practice dissolving. I feel the electricity of my aliveness pulsing through my veins and ligaments, my bones, my muscles, and then I allow that feeling to overtake me until I can't feel my hands folded across my knees, until I'm beyond the artifice of arms and legs and head and heart and the soup of blood and guts that are sloshing around inside of me, until I'm just floating in a universe-sized vat of warmth and nothingness and everythingness. Our bodies and the earth that holds them exist so that we can experience contrast and constraint, so that we can feel pleasure alongside the pain, so we can realize how good we have it when we return to what we all are, and really what we were all along. No body, just love.